Это не блеф.
While Vladimir Putin announced a partial mobilization of Russian citizens, he perhaps gave one of the most revealing speeches regarding his special military operation, with these three major takeaways. First, he addressed Russians and framed it as if Russia was more at war against the West as opposed to Ukraine. Second, he let the West know that Russia will soon be conducting referendums, which will lead to further annexation of Ukrainian lands. And third, once again, he pulled out the threat of nuclear retaliation. In this video, we'll dissect the key moments of Vladimir Putin's speech and break down what that might mean for this war. From the Russian perspective, a war against Ukraine should be easily won. But a war against the West, that's a whole different story.
Насаждать свои псевдоценности. Цель этого Запада – ослабить, разобщить и уничтожить в конечном итоге нашу страну. А сам украинский народ превратили в пушечное мясо и толкнули на войну с нашей страной, развязав эту войну еще в 2014 году.
Here Putin is clearly making the West out to be the enemy. And if he can convince the Russian people that they're at war against the West and not Ukraine, that does several things. First, it gives them someone to blame. Nobody wants war, and for Russians to continue supporting Putin and this war in Ukraine, it's important that they look at someone else as the aggressor. Second, it gives an excuse for slow progress. Here's the map of the control of Ukraine. This is what it looked like at the end of March, this is the middle of June, and this is the current state. It's safe to say that this war has not progressed at the speed that would have been anticipated. So if they can frame it as they're facing the West and not Ukraine, that gives an excuse for the slow progress and the Ukrainians reclaiming some of their land. And third, this puts fear into Russians regarding Western intentions. That can be demonstrated during these points of Putin's speech.
Некоторые безответственные политики на Западе не только говорят о планах по организации поставок Украине дальнобойных наступательных вооружений, систем, которые позволят наносить удары по Крыму, другим регионам России. В Вашингтоне, Лондоне, Брюсселе прямо подталкивают Киев к переносу военных действий на нашу территорию.
If Russians fear that the West is out to destroy Russia, this will ultimately lead to more support of the special military operation and allow for Putin to make escalatory moves like this mobilization. Now, I'm curious, I wonder if Putin is just saying these things to strike fear into the people of Russia, or if he really is paranoid of the West and believes the things that he's saying. Let me know in the comments below what you think. This first point was geared more towards the Russians, but now let's shift towards the second point, which is geared more towards the West.
Парламенты народных республик Донбасса, а также военно-гражданские администрации Херсонской и Запорожской областей приняли решение о проведении референдумов о будущем этих территорий и обратились к нам, к России, с просьбой поддержать такой шаг.
Putin announced that referendums will be taking place in 4 regions, but in Donetsk, they only control roughly half the territory. In Zaporizhia, they control roughly 2/3, but they do not control the capital city, which houses half the population of the oblast. And in Kherson, Ukraine's currently working on a counteroffensive. But what exactly would this vote look like? The leader of the Donetsk People Republic said that election officials would be going door to door, and there'd also be polling places in public spaces. But regardless of what it looks like, it seems clear that the vote will be in favor of joining Russia, and then Russia will go on to annex these lands. But now let's draw back to the mobilization, because it was announced that 300,000 troops will be able to join through this conscription. The initial invasion saw 200,000 troops, of which Western estimates show around 80,000 are now dead or wounded, leaving Russian forces severely depleted. Russia has been desperately trying to find more troops. Reports show that they've been even going to prisons and recruiting convicted criminals. So it makes sense now, after seeing this last counteroffensive where the Ukrainians took back quite a bit of land in the Kharkiv region. If Putin is going to continue this war, he needs more troops. That's why we're seeing this partial mobilization. Putin even said it point blank.
А именно, для защиты нашей Родины, ее суверенитета и территориальной целостности, для обеспечения безопасности нашего народа и людей на освобожденных территориях, считаю необходимым поддержать предложение Министерства обороны и Генерального штаба о проведении в Российской Федерации частичной мобилизации.
However, it will take some time before these soldiers are trained and ready to be dropped in Ukraine. In the meantime, Russia is still extremely vulnerable. And that's why Russia is now announcing these referendums to claim these territories as part of the motherland. And the best way that they can protect these lands until the reinforcements arrive is through point number 3.
Для защиты России и нашего народа мы, безусловно, используем все имеющиеся в нашем распоряжении средства. Это не блеф.
But is this a bluff? Unfortunately, the only way we'll know for sure is for this war to end without nuclear retaliation happening. But in the meantime, this threat is primarily serving as a deterrence to prevent further Western military support of Ukraine. And flashback to the start of the invasion, it worked because the West was slow in providing arms and support to Ukraine. And for a while, it was mainly just the US, the UK, and Poland that were providing military support. It took a while before the other European countries got on board. And furthermore in this speech, Putin goes and points the blame back at the West for being the ones who started these nuclear threats.
О возможности и допустимости применения против России оружия массового поражения, ядерного оружия. Подчеркну это еще раз. Всеми имеющимися у нас средствами. А те, кто пытаются шантажировать нас ядерным оружием, должны знать, что роза ветров может развернуться и в их сторону.
To the people in the West, this may seem like an absolute farce. But to the people of Russia, this is absolutely necessary. To justify making these threats, he needs to point the blame back at someone else. At this point of the war, I believe that nuclear warfare is highly unlikely. As long as there's still a glimmer of hope of Putin getting a favorable result in Ukraine, he will not be firing nukes at the West. I believe that the West should be less afraid of this threat than they should be of the possibility of them backing Putin into a corner where he's lost and has no options. If you found this video interesting, consider subscribing to my channel. In future videos, we'll delve into the mind of Putin to try and explore the many possible reasons of why he invaded Ukraine. And in next week's video, we'll discuss the role that Turkey is playing as peacekeeper. Thank you for watching.